"Now," said the Count, "let us follow him." Franz and the Count, in their turn, then advanced along the same path, which, at the distance of 100 paces, led them over a declivity to the bottom of a small valley. Then they perceived two men conversing in the obscurity. "Ought we to go on?" asked Franz of the Count. "Or should we pause?" "Let us go on. Peppino will have warned the sentry of our coming." One of the two men was Peppino, and the other a bandit on the lookout. Franz and the Count advanced, and the bandit saluted them. "Your Excellency," said Peppino, addressing the Count, "if you will follow me, the opening of the catacombs is close at hand." "Go on, then," replied the Count. They came to an opening behind a clump of bushes, and in the midst of a pile of rocks, by which a man could scarcely pass. Peppino glided first into this crevice. After they got along a few paces, the passage widened. Peppino passed, lighted his torch, and turned to see if they came after him. The Count first reached an open space, and Franz followed him closely. The passageway sloped in a gentle descent, enlarging as they proceeded. Still, Franz and the Count were compelled to advance in a stooping posture, and they were scarcely able to proceed abreast of one another. They went on 150 paces in this way, and then were stopped by, "Who comes there?" At the same time, they saw the reflection of a torch on a carbine barrel. "A friend," responded Peppino, and, advancing alone towards the sentry, he said a few words to him in a low tone, and then he, like the first, saluted the nocturnal visitors, making a sign that they might proceed. We're going to return to this idea of our adaptation, our prestige drama that we are producing. Here is how I would craft this scene. If I'm directing it, I want to know what is going on inside of Franz's mind right now. I mean, obviously I want to know what's going on inside of Dante's mind, but Franz, in this moment, not knowing where he's being taken to, what the level of danger is, what has happened to his buddy Albert, being led into darkness, into the bandits' lair by a man he doesn't trust, and in fact suspects of possibly evil doings. I'm going to be filming this in a way that emphasizes the environment, the dark corners, little flashes of light bleeding into darkness around the edges of the frame, just to emphasize the danger. But mostly, I think I'm going to shoot this where it's a close-up on Franz's face as he looks at, say, the back of Dante as Dante leads him, looking off to, the sides from time to time, just to see if there's any danger there. But I would perhaps coach the actor playing Franz here to not just feel danger, but to be doing a mental calculation of, this is the same man who drugged me on the island of Monte Cristo, who has forced me to watch an execution. And I would have him play the kind of uncertainty, that untethered feeling of, I can't trust this man, but I have no choice except to follow him in this situation. I don't know what to expect. I don't know if Albert's alive or if I'm in danger. Rather than just playing the danger of, the moment of entering the bandit's lair, there has to be so much more mental calculation that Franz is doing right now. Dumas isn't really giving us a lot of that. This feels pretty procedural in talking about how the bandits communicate with one another and when they're allowed to pass, when they're not allowed to pass. I do like some of the visual details that he gives. Quote, "At the same time, they saw the reflection of a torch on a carbine barrel." Like, you can imagine, as we're filming it in the way that I described, how they're slowly moving through this narrowing passage, which I don't like and would be sitting far off to the side on the set that day because I have claustrophobia. But coming through all of that and then just emerging on maybe an abstract shape, but then as the camera pushes in closer and it comes into focus, you see it's the barrel of a gun, and suddenly you're like, oh shit, what am I going to do? I got a gun pointed at my face, only to have that barrel be lowered and told that they can proceed even further. Hopefully by that point, you've set up enough uncertainty and fear and suspicion that proceeding almost feels scarier than having the barrel of a gun pointed at you, because you don't know what else is going to come out of that darkness. Okay, enough of that analytical stuff from me today. I thought I could share a passage, well, not a passage, but a paraphrased passage from the biography with you all. And this comes, again, from the stories of Dumas' father, General Dumas. And I found this little bit to be kind of interesting in relation to some of the penchants Dumas, the author, has for notes and messages and, concealing information to transport it from one place to another. There's this story that the author of this biography tells about his father, who was serving in a particular campaign and was in charge of one of the divisions that was trying to secure one of these places. And he comes across some civilians who were trying to cross this city that his father was holding. And they are taken in for questioning, captured, whatever term you want to apply to it. And General Dumas, part of his job is to suss out any Austrian agents. So he starts his interrogation of these men. One man in particular has him stripped, asks him all these questions, and there's no information on the guy whatsoever that he might be an agent. However, when General Dumas says that he can, leave, apparently this prisoner had a little smirk on his face, to which General Dumas asked part of his garrison to come over, who were chopping up all of the local animals for, butchering them for food for the soldiers, and had them come over with their bloody aprons to kind of threaten this guy, saying, well, we're going to get this out of you one way or the other, even if we have to pull you apart. And it turns out, he didn't do that, and who knows if he was, going to follow through on that threat, but the threat worked, and it turns out that the man who smirked, the prisoner who smirked, was actually carrying a message for a commander of the opposing army, which had been written on a tiny scrap of paper and sealed in wax, and that his orders were that if he were to be captured or in any danger, he were to swallow it for fear that General Dumas, the French army, might intercept it. And I just found that to be pretty fascinating because of, the parallels it has to some things, kind of superficially, but it's unignorable. The idea that Dante is, at the beginning of this book, unwittingly transporting a message, and that's what kicks this whole thing into gear. The ideas of imprisonment and threat, bodily threat, at the risk of being a conspirator. And there's no indication, at least from this biography, that Alexandre Dumas, author, knew this story of his father. But when you hear that, if it is true, and it's not just something that the biographer is inventing to make his own origins sound more like one of his own stories, if it is true, then you can see how that might impress upon a young lad with an adventurous spirit who wants to write these types of stories, even subconsciously, that sort of thing entering your head, and then it being what comes out when you start to write these things. Okay, that's all I got for today. Join me here tomorrow with a little bit more of Chapter 37. Will we finally rescue Albert tomorrow? We shall find out. So join me here then. Okay, goodbye. The Countdown of Monte Cristo is part of the Gruntwork Podcast Network. This show is produced, edited, and hosted by Landon Solano. The original text of The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexandre Dumas. Theme song by Magic Solo. If you want to support the show and others like it, visit patreon.com/gruntworkpod. Thank you for listening. See you tomorrow.